Henry and Grace Harris were a happy couple blessed with three adorable children, Amanda, Bella, and David. They lived in a quiet estate. Their home was always filled with laughter and warmth. Henry worked with a construction company. He was diligent, focused, and well paid. His job provided everything the family needed: rent, food, school fees, and comfort. Grace also worked in an office downtown. She was a kind and organized woman who cared deeply for her family. Every morning, Grace woke up before sunrise. She swept the house, prepared breakfast, packed lunch, and helped the children dress up for school. Henry would leave soon after with a neat tie and polished shoes, while Grace dropped the kids off at their school before heading to work. The children's school also ran an after-school service for pupils whose parents closed late from work, so Grace never needed to employ a stay-at-home nanny. When the children were on vacation, she still woke up early to prepare them and drop them off at school, where they stayed for the day while she went to the office. Then after work, she would stop by, pick up her children, and head back home. This had been her routine. Their life was simple but joyful. In the evenings, the family ate together. The children told stories from school while their parents listened and laughed. On weekends, they watched movies or visited the nearby park. Then, one month, Grace received some unexpected news. Her company was downsizing, and her name was on the list. That was how she lost her job. At first, she felt heartbroken. She sat quietly in their living room holding the letter as tears gathered in her eyes. When Henry came home, she showed it to him and whispered, "I don't know what to do." But Henry smiled softly and held her hand. "Don't worry, Grace. My job is doing fine. We'll be okay. Take a rest for now." His words comforted her, but Grace couldn't sit idle. She wasn't the type to depend on anyone completely, not even her husband. After a few weeks at home, she decided to start something small. She rented a little space close to the estate gate and began selling provisions such as drinks, bread, biscuits, milk, and soap, not because she made much profit, but because it kept her busy. Every morning, she still woke early, prepared the children for school, and walked them out with a smile. Then she went to her shop, arranged her goods neatly, and attended to customers until late afternoon. By 4 p.m., she would close, pick up the children, and return home to cook dinner before Henry came back from work. Her business brought modest income, but she was proud of it. It allowed her to care for her family while contributing in her own little way. Grace often told her children, "Your father works hard for this home, but I want you to know that a woman should never be lazy. Always find something useful to do." She didn't know that one day, those same children she was training with love and discipline would grow up, and one of them would test every lesson she ever taught. Time moved fast in the Harris home. Amanda, Bella, and David were no longer small children. They had grown into bright and promising young adults. Amanda, the first child, was calm and focused. She loved reading, helping her mother, and keeping the house in order. Bella, the second, was bold and outspoken. She liked doing things her own way, even when her parents disagreed. David, the youngest, was gentle and quiet. He loved computers and spent hours fixing small gadgets around the house. Grace's small provision shop had become part of her daily life. Even though Henry's job still covered all the family's needs, she found joy in being productive. Her business gave her something to do while also teaching her children responsibility. Whenever she came home from her shop, she would ask about their day, listen to their stories, and serve dinner. Henry, now a senior staff member in his company, often returned home late, but he made sure weekends were family time. They would eat together, share jokes, and sometimes sit outside enjoying the evening breeze. The children gained admission into prestigious higher institutions. Amanda studied accounting, Bella studied mass communication, and David chose computer science, and they all did well in their respective fields. Though Bella sometimes got into small arguments with her lecturers because of her stubborn nature. Years passed. One by one, they graduated from the university. Henry retired after many years of service, and Grace reduced her shop hours to rest more often. The children started working and decided to support their parents. Each month, they contributed some money to help with bills and groceries. It was a beautiful sight to see. The same children Grace nurtured were now grown and giving back. The Harris family were content, they had peace, laughter, and unity. But among the three, Bella began to change. She had a strong mind and a restless spirit. She didn't like being told what to do, not by her parents or anyone else. Grace noticed it first. The late nights, the new friends, the change in dressing, the tone in her voice. Sometimes when Grace tried to correct her, Bella would reply sharply, "Mom, I'm an adult now. Stop treating me like a child." Grace would sigh and say quietly, "No matter how grown you are, Bella, you will always be my child." Henry thought it was just a youthful phase, but Grace had a mother's instinct. She knew that if Bella didn't slow down, something painful might happen. The Harris home continued to be filled with laughter. Dinner time was always lively. Amanda would share office stories. David would talk about his computer work, and Bella would make everyone laugh with her jokes. But slowly, things began to change. Bella started keeping to herself. She made new friends, the type that loved night outings and weekend parties. At first, her parents thought it was harmless fun, but soon it became a problem. She would return home late, sometimes after midnight, knocking loudly at the gate. Grace would come out in her nightwear, worried and angry. "Bella, what kind of life is this? Don't you have respect for time?" Bella would roll her eyes and walk past her mother. "Mom, I'm not a baby. I work. I'm old enough to decide when I come home." Her words pierced Grace's heart. She remembered the same girl who once hugged her every night before bed. Henry tried to handle it calmly. One evening, he called her to the living room. "Bella, we are not your enemies. We just want you to live responsibly." But Bella only folded her arms and said, "Dad, I contribute money to this house too. I'm not doing anything wrong." That night, Henry and Grace couldn't sleep. Grace cried quietly while her husband stared at the ceiling. The peace in their home was slowly breaking. As weeks passed, Bella became worse. She stopped eating at home, spent weekends out, and began dressing carelessly. Sometimes her siblings tried to talk to her, but she would snap at them. Even the neighbors started whispering about her late night returns. Then one Friday night, things reached the breaking point. Bella came home at almost 2 a.m., banging the gate and shouting for someone to open it. Henry, who had just fallen asleep, rushed out angrily. "Bella, are you out of your mind? Do you know what time it is?" But instead of apologizing, she shouted back, "I'm tired of this house. You people want to control me, but I'm not a child anymore." Henry's voice trembled with anger. "As long as you live under my roof, you will obey my rules." Bella glared at him and said, "Then maybe I shouldn't live here anymore." There was silence. Grace gasped. Amanda covered her mouth in shock. Henry's voice became firm. "If that's what you want, then pack your things and leave. This house belongs to your mother and I. You can't insult us and still stay here." At sunrise, Bella packed her clothes, makeup box, and a few belongings into a suitcase. Grace begged her to stay, tears rolling down her face. "Please, my daughter, don't go. You are a very young woman. It's tough out there. You will regret this." But Bella refused. "Mom, I'll be fine. I can take care of myself." She walked out proudly, leaving behind a home filled with silence and heartbreak. From that day, Grace prayed every night for her daughter. She couldn't sleep well anymore. Each time she heard a knock at night, her heart would race, hoping Bella had returned, but she never did. Henry acted strong on the outside, but deep down he was broken. He told Grace one night, "I didn't send our daughter away out of hate. I just wanted her to learn that life outside this house is not as easy as she thinks." Grace nodded quietly, wiping her tears. When Bella left home, she felt free. For the first time, she didn't have anyone telling her when to come home or what to do. She rented a small one-bedroom apartment not too far from her parents' estate. She furnished it with bright curtains, a small sofa, and a music speaker. In the beginning, she enjoyed her new life. Her friends came to visit often. They cooked, laughed, played loud music, and drank late into the night. Sometimes, her house looked like a mini club. To her, it was fun. She told herself, this is what happiness feels like. But slowly, her freedom started to change shape. The friends who cheered her on encouraged her to go out more. They went to clubs almost every weekend, spent recklessly, and returned home at dawn. Bella began missing work. Sometimes she would wake up tired and decide not to go at all. Other times she arrived late, smelling of alcohol, and pretended to be sick. Her boss noticed the change and gave her several warnings, but she ignored them. A few months later, the inevitable happened. She was fired. Her boss handed her a letter saying, "Bella, you are a smart young woman, but you've changed. We can't keep you anymore." She left the office angry and ashamed. Days passed, and her bill started piling up. The rent reminder came. The electricity bill came. Her savings began to run out. At first, she called her friends for help, but one by one, they stopped answering her calls. The same people who used to visit her every weekend were now too busy. Her life of fun began to crumble like dry bread. She tried looking for another job, but no one wanted to hire her. She became desperate. Her landlord warned her several times about her rent. Then one hot afternoon, he came with two men and threw her things outside. Her clothes, bags, and mattress were all on the street. Bella begged him, crying, "Please, sir, give me just one more week." But the landlord shook his head. "You've had enough time, young woman. Leave my property." She sat by the roadside with tears in her eyes, watching people pass by. Some looked at her with pity, others with judgment. That night, she had nowhere to sleep. She went from one friend's house to another, hoping someone would take her in, but they all gave excuses. "My place is full," said one of her friends. "I'm traveling tomorrow," said the next. "I'll call you later," said another. No one helped her. At last, Bella began sleeping in front of a closed shop near the market. She would cover herself with her wrapper and clutch her small bag tightly. In the morning, she begged for food and washed her face with rainwater from a gutter corner. Days turned into weeks. Her once smooth skin became rough. Her hair lost its shine. She looked nothing like the bright, confident girl she once was. One evening, as she sat beside a kiosk watching people walk home from work, she whispered to herself, "I wished I had listened to Mom. I wished I had stayed home." Her eyes filled with tears. For the first time, she understood that freedom without discipline was a trap. She wanted to go home, but shame held her back. She couldn't face her father after everything she had said to him. She sat there, alone and broken. Weeks turned into months, and Bella's life on the street grew harder. She begged during the day and slept under an old shed at night. Sometimes, she didn't eat until evening. Her clothes were torn, her shoes were worn out, and her body had grown thin. She often thought about her family, about her mother's smile, her father's strict but loving face, and her siblings' laughter. Tears would fill her eyes whenever she remembered how she had walked out of the house in pride. Now she wished she could turn back time. One sunny afternoon, she sat at a corner near a busy market, holding an empty plate. People passed by without looking at her. She tried to smile as she begged, but she was too ashamed. She had lost everything. her job, her friends, her comfort, and her peace. That same afternoon, her elder sister, Amanda, was driving home from work. She decided to stop at the market to buy fruit for their mother. As she parked and stepped out of the car, she noticed a woman sitting by the roadside, begging. Something about the woman looked familiar. The shape of her face, the way she sat. Amanda took a few steps closer. Her heart began to beat fast. She bent down slowly and whispered, "Bella!" The woman raised her head weakly. For a moment, Amanda froze. It was Bella, her sister. She looked completely different. Her hair was rough, her eyes red from crying, and her clothes were dusty and torn. Amanda's eyes filled with tears. She knelt beside her sister, holding her trembling hands. "Bella, what happened to you? How did you end up like this?" Bella looked away, ashamed. "Please, Amanda, don't tell anyone. I can't face that. He would never forgive me." Amanda shook her head, crying softly. "You are still our sister. You have to come home." But Bella refused. She pulled her hand back and said, "No, I can't. I brought shame to everyone. Let me stay here." Amanda tried to convince her, but Bella remained firm. Then Amanda stood up, wiping her tears. "I'm going home to tell Mom. She needs to know you are alive." Bella didn't stop her. She just sat quietly, hugging her knees as Amanda walked away in tears. That evening, when Amanda got home, Grace was setting the table for dinner. Amanda dropped the fruit bag and sat down heavily. Grace noticed her pale face. "Amanda, what's wrong?" Amanda's voice shook as she said, "Mom, I saw Bella." Grace froze. The spoon in her hand fell to the floor. "You saw her? Where?" "At the market. She was begging. Mom, she's suffering." Grace covered her mouth, her eyes white with shock. Tears poured down her face as she whispered, "Oh my God, my daughter." She didn't wait for another word. She tied her wrapper and said, "Take me to her, now." Amanda tried to calm her, but Grace was already at the door, her heart beating fast. Amanda didn't allow Grace to go out, but promised to take her to where Bella was the following day. That night, Grace didn't sleep. She sat in the living room praying, "Lord, please keep my child safe until morning. Let me find her alive." The next morning, as the sun rose, Grace and Amanda left the house. The journey to the market was quiet, and both women were lost in thought. Grace's heart was heavy, but one thing was clear. She would bring her daughter home, no matter what it took. When Grace and Amanda arrived at the busy market, they moved from one corner to another, asking people if they had seen a slim young woman begging by the roadside. Many people shook their heads until one fruit seller pointed toward an old kiosk. "Madam, she sits under that shed every morning," the woman said kindly. Grace turned and saw her daughter. Bella was sitting on the bare ground, her head bent, her face thin and tired. The sight broke her heart. Without thinking, Grace ran toward her, calling, "Bella, Bella, my daughter." Bella lifted her head slowly. When she saw her mother running toward her, she froze. Tears filled her eyes. She tried to stand up, but her legs were weak. Grace reached her and fell to her knees, hugging her tightly. Both of them cried loudly, right there in the middle of the market. People stopped to watch, but Grace didn't care. "My daughter, what happened to you? Look at you," she cried. Bella held her mother's arms, shaking. "Mom, I'm sorry. I should have listened to you. I was proud. I thought I knew everything." Grace stroked her head gently. "It's okay, my child. You are alive. That's what matters. Let's go home." At first, Bella resisted. "Mom, I can't go home. Dad will never forgive me." But Grace looked at her firmly through her tears. "Your father's heart is softer than you think. He may be angry, but he still loves you. Come home." With Amanda's help, they guided Bella to the car. Grace covered her with a shawl and gave her water to drink. Throughout the ride, Bella kept crying silently, whispering, "Sorry, Mom. I'm sorry." When they reached home, Grace helped her daughter into the living room. Henry was sitting on the sofa reading the newspaper. He looked up and his face froze. The paper fell from his hands. Bella stopped, trembling. Her voice was weak. "Dad." For a long moment, silence filled the room. The only sound was the ticking wall clock. Henry stood up slowly, his eyes filled with shock and emotion. He walked closer, staring at his daughter's face, at her rough hair, her tired eyes, and her trembling hands. Grace placed her hand on his arm and whispered, "She has suffered enough." Henry took a deep breath. His eyes softened. He opened his arms. "Come here, Bella." Bella ran to him, crying uncontrollably. He held her tightly, his tears falling on her hair. "You are still my daughter," he said quietly. "Welcome home." Grace and Amanda joined the hug. The family stood together, weeping and smiling at the same time. Even David, who had been silent all through, came closer and touched his sister's shoulder, whispering, "Welcome back, Bella. We missed you." From that day, peace returned to the Harris home. Grace nursed Bella back to health. With time, Bella found another job, this time in a smaller company where she worked with humility and dedication. She stopped going to clubs and became closer to her family. Every morning, she would help her mother in the small shop before going to work. Sometimes, when Grace looked at her daughter, she would smile and say, "You see, my child, mistakes can teach us what advice could not." Bella would nod her head, her eyes shining with tears. "Yes, Mom, I've learned my lesson. Nothing is greater than family." Months later, on a peaceful Sunday afternoon, the family sat together after lunch, laughing, eating fruits, and sharing stories. Bella looked around the table and whispered softly to herself, "If you lose your way, don't lose your home." She smiled, grateful for the second chance life had given her. This is the end of my story. Dear friends, the lesson to be learned from this story is that freedom without discipline is a trap that leads to regret. A child who ignores corrections will learn from experience, and no matter how far a child strays, the home will always remain open. If this story touched your heart, share your thoughts with me in the comments below. Give it a like, share it with your loved ones, and subscribe if you haven't done so already. Don't forget to turn on the notification bell so you won't miss the next story. Thank you for watching, and remember, every tale carries a lesson if only we choose to listen. Until I bring another true life tale your way, goodbye and remain blessed.